A change in pace next. It's time for our business update. Brian Quinn joins me. Brian, good afternoon to you. We're starting with some revelations about what the UK government has planned for migration rules under Brexit, of course.
A British paper, The Guardian, today published a leaked document from the UK's Home Office showing that the government plans to end the free movement of workers immediately upon exiting the European Union. The plan doesn't yet represent official policy, but it does show that the government wants to severely curtail the ability of lower-skilled EU workers to remain in the UK and make it harder for people who do manage to work there to bring their families. Now, the government has responded to the leak, saying that it's trying to strike a balance between Britain's desire for highly educated, skilled immigrants and better jobs for native Brits. But critics say the government is failing to appreciate the economic contributions of lower-skilled EU workers.
Agriculture, care, leisure, not to mention the NHS, is very reliant on workers from the EU, some of them low-skilled, in fact, many of them low-skilled. So we've got to think about what's going to happen to the economy and what the balance is between the political will to restrict freedom of movement and the economic reality.
Well, Brian, one of the top stories we've been following on France 24 today is Donald Trump's decision to do away with the DACA programme. How are business leaders responding to that?
Not favorably, you would say. Outrage is a common term being used to describe the reaction of U.S. business leaders, over 400 of whom signed a letter asking Trump not to rescind DACA. And some notable reactions here. Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg, who called Tuesday a sad day for America and said Trump's decision was not just wrong but cruel. Apple's Tim Cook said he was deeply dismayed. Apple employs 250 so-called dreamers. Cook said the company will fight for them to be treated as equals. Trump's decision is creating a rift between his administration and U.S. corporate leaders at a time when he'll be looking for their support more than ever. Along with Republican congressmen, he's looking to move on enacting sweeping tax reform for the U.S.
First, we must make the tax code as simple as possible. It's extremely complex, it's not fair, and it's extremely hard to understand. So we want to make it as simple as possible. Second, we must provide tax relief for middle-class workers and families. Third, we must restore a competitive edge, which we've lost. We're doing fine, but we lost the competitive edge. You see what's going on all over the world.
Well, away from the US, here in France, the government's looking at raising funds for the stock markets.
The French state's a major stakeholder in a number of important companies on Paris's CAC 40 stock index, companies like Air France and Renault. The government is now looking to sell some of its stock shares, though, to finance research and innovation projects. Alexander Hurst has the details.
France has its money on its mind, specifically some assets it wants to unload for cold, hard cash. Even after a wave of privatizations, the French government is still a shareholder in close to 1,800 different companies. Those assets are worth a combined 100 billion euros. But two-thirds of that, or 66 billion euros, is concentrated in just 13 firms traded on the CAC 40. The government is planning to sell off some of its holdings in order to pay down debt and fund research. For Prime Minister Edouard Philippe, it's not privatization of assets, but rather exiting investment positions.
The state is a stockholder in a certain number of businesses, with money invested in them. It's possible, certain even, that we will exit these investments. Selling stock will be done in the most beneficial way for the state.
The first sale is the government's 4.5% stake in Engie, a multinational electric utility, for more than 1.5 billion euros. It's an initial contribution to a 10 billion euro fund to finance research and innovation. The Paris airport's holding company, Renault, the lottery, state positions in those and other companies could all be next on the list. But the wave of impending stock sales didn't stop the state from nationalizing the Saint-Nazaire-based shipbuilder STX in July.
Well, speaking of the CAC 40, how are the markets doing in Europe today?
Not the worst time to sell shares in Renault today. They're up over 2.5%. But overall, European indexes are in the red midday Wednesday. Tension over North Korea still weighing on the markets. Investors also looking ahead to tomorrow's meeting of the European Central Bank Governing Council amid talk of an eventual exit from loose monetary policy there. The CAC 40 here in Paris down around 0.25%. On the FTSE 100 down 2/3%, and the Frankfurt DAX just under the flat line.
And Brian, finally for business, a story of a bookie that didn't quite know when to fold.
Got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them, Rochelle, as the song goes. Well, it looks like UK online betting house 888 stayed in a little too long. The company went from a pre-tax profit of nearly £28 million for the first months of 2016, that's the first 6 months, excuse me, to a loss of over £17 million for the same period this year. That loss stems partly from setting aside around £35 million for a possible German tax bill, but also from a record fine of nearly £8 million in the UK for failing to prevent gambling addicts from using their site. UK's Gambling Commission said that 888 committed, quote, outrageous failings as more than 7,000 people who tried to ban themselves from the site were still allowed to place bets on it. Normally it's the casino who kicks you out, but sometimes you've got to quit, and they've got to help you.
Exactly, and that's precisely why I'm not a betting woman, because I know I'd be addicted straight away. Brian, thank you.
House always wins, Rochelle.
It does, indeed. Thank you very much for our business update. I was going to say our gambling update, but I'm going to have business update.
Next time.